Hello and welcome back to EVE Online. In our last episode, we went over some of the basics of navigation and flying your ship around, and we sort of whetted our appetite on a little bit of combat, but today we're going to get into it. We're going to go looking for some actual PvP. Now, the ship we were flying in our last episode, the Velator, as I said at the time, it's kind of useless. Maybe that's a little unfair to the ship. You can do some things in a Velator, you can do some basic mining and mission running, but it's not really a ship that's considered good for a player versus player combat. So because of that, I went ahead and purchased a new ship, an Incursus. I'm going to go ahead and click on it, click enter the ship hangar here, and we're going to go ahead and take a look. It's a formidable looking craft there. Not one of the strongest ships in the game, but it's good for a character like ours who's still very low in skill points and doesn't have a whole lot of money. Now, those of you who are familiar with EVE Online will look at the ship and look at the fittings I'm about to show you and say, Alpaca, there's no way you'd have enough money to purchase this ship and the fittings, and you'd be right. I cheated a little bit. I sent some money from one of my established characters over to my new character so I could buy this ship. Most new characters aren't going to be able to have that kind of money to buy a ship like this out of the gate, but I wanted to be able to show you some combat. I wanted to have a ship that could, do the mission that I want to do and show it to you. In a future episode, probably our next episode, I will show you how we actually make money so you can have the money to buy ships like this in the future. But for now, I didn't want to waste your time with the boring part of making that money. I wanted to get right into the action. So let's go ahead and I want to bring up something here. This is the map of the EVE universe. Here on the left on this bar of icons here, this one right here, the map beta, you can also access it by hitting Control F10. And if we zoom in using our scroll wheel, it'll let us see the system we're in. Here's Dodoxy. If we zoom out, we can see all the different regions. The way we have it sorted right now, if we click here, we can sort it by different things. It's colored right now by security status, so you can see all of these red systems here. These are your nullsec systems, 0.0 and below. Your yellowish orange systems, these are low sec. Into here where it's green and blue, these are your high sec systems. We're looking for a low sec system. Remember, we want to get into combat with other players, and in high sec you really can't do that. You can have duels, but there's really... We're looking for real combat. We're looking for combat with people that, they're out doing their missions, and we're going to try to get in a fight with them. And down here at the bottom of the map, where it gets yellow and orange, here's some low sec systems, 0.4. That might work. I'm going to go ahead and right-click on that, and I can set that as my destination. Now you can see on the map, it's now showing the route. I'm going to be traveling out of Dodoxy into this system, Violade, down here into Ball, and all the way down here into Decon. Let's close the map here. And now if you look here on the left side of the screen where it says route, it's showing us our route. We're starting here in Dodoxy. We're going to be making 3 jumps. 1, 2, and 3. And you can see it's color coding them based on the security status. We'll eventually be ending. Here's our first jump, Violade, 0.8, and our final destination, Decon, a 0.4 system. So I'm going to show you how we navigate to other star systems. I'm going to go ahead and undock. We'll get out into space. Here we are leaving the system. This is a pretty busy system. If you look here on the left at your chat window under the local tab, you can see that there's 238 people in this system right now. This is a pretty busy trading hub. One thing that comes in handy, having an eye on that local screen there, whenever you're in high sec, low sec, or even null sec, anybody who's in the system with you will show up on this local tab, so you'll know if you're alone in a system or if there's other people there. Say you're in a system mining or running missions. There are certain sites, relic sites, that you can scan and look for hidden treasures, and you're there alone scanning, and suddenly you see 5, 10, 20 names pop into the system all at once. Well, that might be a good time to find a safe place to hide, because they're coming to the system with a gang looking for trouble, perhaps. Maybe they're just passing through, but you don't know. Alright, we've set our destination. I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way real quick. I'll explain what that is in a moment. We've set our destination, so now here over on our overview window here, all of these different items, like I showed last time, are stargates, different space stations in the system, and other items of interest. Well, one of them's highlighted here. You can see this one is highlighted with yellow. That's where we're going. It's what's called an Autopilot Route. Now, if I wanted to, down here at the bottom, I could click Autopilot, and it would fly me to the next gate, jump me through the gate to the next system, fly me to the next gate, jump me through that one, and get me all the way to my destination. Let me be the first person to tell you, never press this button. Never use Autopilot, and I'll explain why. Let's go ahead and manually jump to the gate like you're supposed to, and I'll explain why you do it this way in a moment. Now we can align to it, which means we're pointing towards it, but we're just going to go ahead and warp. See, we're going to go ahead and do that. That's one of the first criteria for warping. Whenever I go to warp to it, it's going to first align me, raise my speed, and once my speed gets up to about 75% of maximum, I'll be able to warp. Let me show you how that works again. I'm going to go ahead and point over in some other direction real quick by double-clicking out in space. And we're going to stop the ship. This is important information for combat later. That's why I'm going over this right now. So we want to go ahead and warp to the gate to Violade. I'm going to go ahead and click on warp to within 0 meters and watch what happens. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of point the camera in that general direction. The ship's going to point towards the thing. My speed's going to start increasing, but we're not going to warp right away, and I'll show you what happens.
Warp drive active.
My warp increases, but I don't actually go into warp until we hit about 75% of my max speed. Now we're in warp. Now that's important to understand. If we're already aligned, moving towards the object we're warping towards, at full velocity, and I hit warp, I'll warp immediately. If I'm moving in some other direction or I'm fully stopped, it's going to take me a moment or two to align, get up to speed, and warp. In combat, well, that second or two could mean the difference between getting destroyed or not getting destroyed, especially if an enemy that we're fighting has an item that can keep us from going into warp. If they can stop us from jumping before we actually get fully into warp, they've got us. So when you're in, that's something to understand. When you're out mining or doing other items in space, it's always important to have some item, like say this planet here, be aligned. You always want to be aligned to some celestial body, so that if trouble finds you, somebody comes and starts attacking you, you can immediately hit warp and you'll be gone. But right now we want to go ahead and go through this gate. We want to go into the Violade system, so let's go ahead and click on the warp gate here, and we'll click jump. The system will take us into the next system, the Violade system. Alright, we're in a brand new solar system now. And if you look at my ship, notice how it looks like it's transparent, like it's invisible. When you first come out of a gate, you're cloaked for about 60 seconds. No one can see you. They can see that you appeared in the local chat. See, Alpaca Jones is listed here in local. But nobody can actually see my ship. So you have a little bit of a moment or two to get your bearings, see who's around, see if there's other ships that might be a threat to you. The second I activate any modules or start moving, start aligning, or trying to warp, I will appear. In fact, watch, I'm going to go ahead and click over here and we'll start moving. See, my ship is now uncloaking. The gate cloak has now been disabled. Now, there are some ships you'll find in the game that actually have cloaks, have modules that allow them to cloak when they're not coming through a gate. They can cloak and be invisible as they move around through space. Most ships can fit a basic cloak, which has a bunch of limitations, but there are special ships, unfortunately ships that are not available to alpha players, to alpha clones, that allow you to fit a cloak and without some of the limitations. We're not going to really get into all that in this episode. That's something we'll talk about later. All right, let's go ahead and move to our next Stargate on the jump. We still have 2 jumps to go. And now I'm going to show you why we don't autopilot. We're aligned to the next Stargate. And instead of going ahead and clicking, warp to within 0 or just jump, I'm going to click autopilot.
Autopilot engaged.
So the game's going to automatically align me and warp me to my next destination.
Warping to Stargate. Warp drive active.
But when we land, I want you to watch what happens as we land on the gate. Notice we didn't warp to within 0 on the gate. We're 15 kilometers out from the dang thing.
Approaching Stargate.
So now the computer will activate our engines and slowly drive us in towards the Stargate. I'm going to turn off autopilot for a moment.
Disabled.
We'll go ahead and just keep moving towards it. That's 15 kilometers of flight in which I am exposed. If somebody attacks me now, I mean, obviously we're in high sec, it's not likely to happen, but again, remember, suicide ganking is a thing. I'm not close enough to the gate to actually jump through it yet. If somebody were to attack me now, I'd have no way to escape. You never want to use autopilot because it leaves you stranded far away from the gate without any way to quickly get to it. And that can put you in threat, especially when you're in low sec or null sec, or even in high sec if you're a miner or flying an industrial ship with valuable cargo, and it might be in somebody's interest to go ahead and attack you anyway. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and jump through this gate again, through the next gate rather. Okay, we have one more jump. This next jump will take us into low sec. Before we go there, let's quickly jump over to this, there's one space station listed in this system. I'm going to go ahead and quickly dock with it.
Warp drive active.
We're going to take a moment to examine the fitting on the ship, and I'm going to explain what we're going to be doing.
Docking permission requested. Docking request accepted.
Okay, here we are in the station. So like I said, I went ahead and sent some money over from one of my characters, from one of my established characters that I had from when I was a paying subscriber to EVE, so I could buy the ship and the fittings in it. All in all, it cost a little bit under 2 million ISK. So, that's a basic minimum amount you're going to need for a ship like this. If you hit Alt-F, it brings up the fitting window, and this is how I fit the ship. In the high slots, I went ahead and put these light ion particle cannons. They're what are called Tech 1 items. Let me go ahead and show you the info real quick. Anode light ion particle cannon 1. Now, there are also, of course, light ion blaster 2s. There's a level 2 of almost every item. There's usually a Tech 1 and a Tech 2. The Tech 2, unfortunately, as you can see, requires you to be an Omega clone. But these Tech 1 ones are still serviceable. They're not going to be quite as effective as the Tech 2, but we should still be able to get in some trouble with them. I went ahead and fit 3 of them because there were 3 high slots. I also had to buy ammunition for these guns. In this case, we went ahead and bought antimatter charges. I bought Caldari Navy antimatter charges of the small variety. Different guns are of different sizes. For example, this is a frigate, so it has small guns. Larger ships like battleships or destroyers, different types of ships have different size guns, and those types of guns take different size ammo charges. You have to know what you're going to be fitting so you know which charges are required for your guns. Each of these guns fills with about 120 units of ammo, so altogether I have about 360 rounds. I don't think we're going to need more than that for what we're going to be doing. If we do, well, we can always come back and resupply. Here in the mid slots, I fit 3 items that can be useful in PvP. This is called a Warp Scrambler. Basically, it allows me to target an enemy. While I'm targeting an enemy, I can use my Warp Scrambler to stop the enemy from warping away. They can't use their warp engine, as long as they're within 7,500 meters of me. If they can get outside of that range, they can go ahead and warp and they can escape. They might also have an item on board in one of the slots of their ship that protects against warp scrambling. Those are called warp stabilizers. If you have a warp stabilizer, well, you can defend against one warp scrambler. I also have an item called a webifier. That slows down an enemy ship and keeps them from being able to get far away. So if I want to keep that enemy within 7,500 meters, well, this webifier will keep them there because they can't move very fast. It's almost like webbing that you put on the ship to slow it down. Again, there are countermeasures that people can use against that, but basically this one will reduce the target ship's velocity by 50%. I also have an afterburner. That'll allow me to go faster. Now, see, using a webifier, because it slows my ship its normal velocity, remember at the bottom it showed that little velocity dial? Remember, you only have to get to 75% of your max velocity to warp. So sometimes using a webifier on someone can actually make it easier for them to warp because their maximum velocity is so low it doesn't take them as long to get up to it. That's why you want to use these things in combination. You want to go ahead and scramble them and then webify them. Scrambling someone is known as putting a point on them in the slang, in EVE slang. 1 point of warp scrambling. Down here in the low slots, I put some defensive items, an armor repair. If we start taking damage, we might be able to stave off being destroyed a little bit by using this. Also a damage control system, same sort of thing that as we had before. That helps us, increases our resistances to different types of damage. And this item, a magnetic field stabilizer, that will allow, it makes our guns work a little bit better. It basically gives a bonus to our firing rate and to the damage of hybrid turrets. That's the kind of turrets we have. Now you'll notice here the 4th slot is empty. I was going to put an item there, what are something called tungsten plates. A 200 millimeter rolled tungsten compact plate basically helps reinforce your armor. Unfortunately, to use that, if you look down here, notice I only have 4.3 points of CPU left. See here, it's almost completely full. It's 97.35% used up. To fit those on my ship would have required more CPU than I had, so I couldn't fit that last item. So remember, as I told you before, you got to keep an eye on your CPU and power grid usage. If your skills aren't high enough, you're not able to fit the items you need. I went ahead between sessions and went ahead and added some more skills to my skill queue, like energy grid upgrades, electronics upgrades. These will all help reduce the need, the CPU needs of items like that in the future. I also put in some interesting skills like drones that are useful in combat. One of the items I bought was a drone, this Hobgoblin 1. Drones are very useful in combat. While you're fighting, you can add the drone. It adds another target. While the enemy's busy shooting at you, well, this drone is shooting them as well, so they have to maybe concentrate on shooting down your drone before they can focus on you. If you're able to fly multiple drones, that's even better. Unfortunately, I can't actually use this drone yet. I don't have the skills. That's one of the reasons why I'm currently learning drones and drone avionics. Eventually I'll be able to use drones in combat though. Alright, well that's a basic overview of what I put in the ship. There are other things you can add, like these slots where you can put things called rigs. Rigs are items that increase the capabilities of your ship But unlike these types of modules, you can't put them in and take them off. Once you put a rig in, you can't remove it without destroying it. So it's kind of, you have to think twice about what rigs you put on and when you want to change them. A lot of times, adding them will increase one stat of your ship at the expense of another statistic. It might increase your CPU usage, but maybe it has a negative effect on your capacitor or something like that. All right, well, that's enough of an overview of that. We'll get more into that, in further episodes. We'll get into more detail. Let's go look for trouble.
Active.
Now, if we were able to use our drones, this window here on the left would allow me to drag this drone out into space and just release it there, and that would launch my drone. Here on the top of this window, if I click on this, I can set, do I want these drones to be passive? Maybe they'll just fly around me and defend me if someone attacks me, or aggressive and they'll attack my target. There's different settings depending on how you want to set them up, and you can create drone groups. You can set things up so you can organize the drones however you want them. Again, for right now, we can't actually use them because I don't have the requisite skills. Okay, so one last thing before we jump through the gate here. If you hit Alt-D, or down here where it says scanners, if you click on the right one here, it'll bring up your directional scanner. The directional scanner is a vital tool for every EVE Online player. What it does is, you can set the range, and within a certain range, it'll let you know every object that's within that range. So I'm going to move it down here to 1 AU. Within 1 AU of us, there is our Stargate right in front of us here. It's 3,621 meters away. There's also some control towers. Those could be player-operated stations, maybe. One of them is named Pizza Hut. Now, I don't know where that is exactly or how far away it is. All I know is that it's somewhere within 1 AU of us. It could be anywhere within a 360-degree direction around us. Now, that angle control here is a way that sometimes people can try to find different items if they're searching for them. So, for example, if I reduce this all the way down to 5 degrees, well, I can tell you right now there is nothing within 1 AU of me that's within a 5-degree angle of the front of my ship. Certainly nothing that isn't cloaked, at least. I can widen that angle. If I widen it out to about 90 degrees, it'll give me a wedge shape 45 degrees to the left and right of my ship. One of those control towers is within that wedge. It's within 1 AU from about there to there. So if I was trying to find that control tower, maybe it's... I'd look and see, maybe there's a celestial body, maybe one of the moons of this planet is in that direction. If I really wanted to look hard for it, I could use my warp 2s and try to narrow it down. Of course, I can expand it even further to 180 degrees, which gives me a view from about there, the far right of my ship, all the way to the far left. Or I can put it all the way to 360 degrees and get a scan of all the way around. Now, the way this comes in handy, let me go ahead and move back towards the gate here. We don't want to be hanging out here too far by ourselves. Where this comes in handy is if you're out mining by yourself and you don't want enemies to be able to sneak up on you, land on grid, target you, and begin to engage you before you can even respond. You want to have some warning that they're coming in. Well, you can set your range to maybe, say, 5 AUs. And you keep an eye on what's here, and you keep hitting the scan. You keep pressing it, every few seconds, maybe every 5 seconds or so. And if you see something appear, like, say, a catalyst, a well-known PvP gank ship, you suddenly see a catalyst or two appear, and you see their distance, and their distance is decreasing, and they're coming in towards you. Well, that's a pretty good sign that danger's coming your way. Maybe it's time to be aligned to one of the celestial bodies or a station and get out of there. Directional scan is something that's very vital for use in PvP, while running missions. Most fleets have somebody dedicated to just keeping their eye on the directional scan as their sole job as part of the fleet. So you'll find that this comes in handy pretty much no matter what you're doing in the EVE Online universe. Alright, well, it's time to go ahead and get on with this. I think we've stalled for long enough. Let's go ahead and jump through this gate. Once we've done so, we are in low sec. Like I said, PvP can happen anywhere in the EVE universe, but here, there is no consequences, and in fact, it's warning us. The destination system is point 4 security status. This is extremely dangerous, and Concord Police cannot guarantee your safety there. Do you want to proceed? Let's do it. We are more than likely going to die, but that's okay if we do. One of the main reasons I wanted to come right out here into a low security system and try to look for trouble is to demonstrate that death is just a part of life in the EVE Online universe. You're going to get attacked. You're going to lose your ship. You may well lose your pod and die. It's not a big deal, and you need to learn to let go of the fear of death in this game. Unlike in a lot of other games, it's not going to negatively affect you. You're not going to lose stats. You're going to lose some possessions, but you can always get those back. You can always make more money. You can always get more ships. Learning to not fear dying in this game means that you'll be able to go into the more dangerous parts of the game. You'll be able to go into nullsec and find the great opportunities that are there to make money, to make friends, to join corporations, and to really get into the meat of the game. Now we're here looking for someone to fight. I notice that there's 5 people in this system. I don't know where they are. Who can say? There are a couple ways we might be able to find out, though. There are some asteroid belts. Perhaps they're mining. I'm going to stop the ship before we go too far away from the Stargate here. But right now I'm aligned to this, more or less to this asteroid belt. Let's bring up that directional scan again. We're going to lower down our angle here. But we're going to increase our range. Well, there's nothing over in that direction. How about this asteroid belt? And I'm going to go ahead and... The directional scan doesn't get affected by the way your ship faces. It's affected by the way the camera is facing. So I'm going to go ahead and click on these different asteroids and then hit the C key so we're facing them. Well, here in this direction, there's some giant secure containers, some corporate hangar arrays, and a Galente control tower. Somebody set up a player-operated structure out there. There's almost like a player-operated station there. I might show you a little bit more about that in a little while. But right now, we're looking for ships. Off in this direction, well, there are some skiffs. A lot of different skiffs. More skiffs than there are players in the system. I'm curious as to what might be going on there. Let's take a look. Let's go ahead and warp to that asteroid belt, and we'll warp within 10 kilometers.
Warp drive active.
We could be getting into a fight for all we know. Let's see what happens. But that was enough to pique my curiosity. Well, there's a ship, but it doesn't look like anybody's on board it right now. But we are being attacked by NPC enemies who are approaching us. And they've dampened our sensors. And now we are being attacked. Somebody's arrived in the system, probably to defend their skiffs. And we are being attacked by them as well. Let's target this person. And we will go down in a blaze of glory. our ship was destroyed and we're really quickly trying to warp back to the Stargate in our pod. Let's see if we can do that before our pod gets destroyed. We're aligning. We're trying to go into warp.
Warp drive active.
And I apparently forgot to hit the warp button, but that guy decided not to kill my pod. That was very generous of him. Let's go ahead and jump back through this gate, back into high sec. And now I can show you a couple of items, a couple of timers on the top of the screen. Now if you look here on the top of the screen, there's a jump cloak timer. This was showing me that I have 47 seconds left of that invisibility. Remember I talked about the gate cloak? That lets me know how much longer I have on that. Now these other timers have to do with the fact that I got into combat. Over here there's a what's called the log off timer. Because I got into combat, if I try to log off right now in space, my ship won't disappear quickly as it would normally. Normally if you just log off in space, your ship will disappear and will actually warp off to a safe location and just vanish from space. The next time you log in, you'll be in your ship will warp back to where you were when you left it, and you'll just continue. You can log off safely even in space, you don't have to be in a station. Well, for me, because I was in combat, I can't do that for another 2 minutes and 42 seconds. If I logged off now, my pod would just remain sitting where it is. Let's move a little closer to this gate just in case. Actually, let's head for this station.
Warp drive active.
Somebody looking for an easy pod kill, even if it's going to mean they get killed by Concord. Let's not allow ourselves to remain vulnerable out here. So like I said, we have another 2 minutes and 13 seconds before I can safely log off in space. If I want to log off safely, I need to get into a station. Now here, this red item is the same thing. This was because we were in combat with another Capsuleer. Basically, they're the same, let me start over here. These are the same timers. One of them is because we were in combat with NPCs. One because we were in combat with another player. The one because of being in combat with another player is much longer, but this is basically so you can't cheat. If you're in PvP and it's not going well for you, you suddenly log off. You drop connection, you think that's the way you can get out and your character will suddenly disappear. No, that's not going to happen. All that'll happen is, yeah, you'll be out of the game, your ship will just remain there pilotless, and your enemy can destroy it.
Docking permission requested.
So that first PvP didn't go all that well. We got pretty quickly killed. But that's alright. So let's look back in the combat and see exactly what went wrong. I went ahead and went into warp, heading towards that asteroid field, ready to investigate these supposedly abandoned skiffs. Now, if you look at my overview, keep an eye on that overview on the right as I land on grid. I go ahead and switch over to the general view to get rid of all of the distractions, and you can see that there are the two NPC enemies. Don't see anybody else yet. I go ahead and head for the skiff, but almost immediately in just a moment you'll see that Gnosis appear on grid. Now I'm so busy worrying, there, the Gnosis just appeared. Now I'm so busy focused on that NPC attacking me, I didn't even notice that an enemy was approaching. If I had been descanning like I was supposed to be, remember I told you about descan before? I would have seen him coming, would have realized, here comes an enemy, and I could have made a decision. I could have gone ahead and engaged him right away. I could have headed right towards him, and we probably still would have lost the battle. But I wouldn't have had to wait until I was already being engaged here to finally start to react to him, to try to target him, start aligning towards him, and be pretty much destroyed before I could even fire my guns. As you can see, my armor is gone. Here goes my hull. I'm almost dead. So this is a case of me not being situationally aware, failing to use D-scan like I told you about before. Now here, I immediately popped into my pod. I clicked on a nearby celestial and immediately aligned for it, got ready to warp like I'm supposed to. But I forgot to hit the warp button. I hit align and not warp. I sat here for a moment wondering why I wasn't warping yet. So there's another thing to never forget. You should be spamming the warp button at this moment. You should be clicking the heck out of it. That's how you survive. Because meanwhile, most people who are playing against you would be in the middle of trying to target lock your pod and kill you. I was very lucky to get away. He obviously just wasn't interested in my pod. Let me go ahead and I'll show you the record of that kill. Here's where you can find your records of your combats. If you click on your character sheet, and over here you click on the Interactions tab. Normally it's going to be over here under Kill Rights. If somebody murders you improperly, you get what's called a kill right on them. And you can activate that for money. You can put a bounty on there. You can put a kill right on their head so that other players have the right to kill them even in high sec. You can also check your standings on the different NPC factions and your security status with regards to Concord. But here in the combat log, you can see any kills you've made. In our case, we've made none. And you can show all of your losses. In our case, we have one, our incursus. If we double click on that, here we go. Here's my ship, Alpaca Jones. Involved parties were 2. That would have been, they're including the Serpentis Protector or the NPC because they did some damage to us. Or at least fired at us. However, out of the 1,524 total damage that were taken, 1,300 of that, 87% of it were done by this character, Tremor Main. Congratulations to Tremor Main on your effective kill of us. He was flying a Gnosis. That's a battle cruiser. A battle cruiser is going to be a little bit, I was going to say, a frigate like ours isn't really going to do too well against a battle cruiser like that. But that's alright. Like I said, that's what we were hoping would happen. And again, look here. He also had Hobgoblin 2s. Those are those drones I was talking about. Like I said, those are pretty effective. The Serpentis Protectors were flying around in frigates themselves. But no big deal. And you can see here, here's all of the items that were on my ship that were lost for a total of 1,319,000 ISK. And that will show up on the various killboard websites. Like I said, you're going to die in this game, and like I said, there's nothing really bad that happens from dying. Now, some people are very concerned about never dying when they can help it. They want their killboard statistics to be the best. They want to, never have their killboard statistics be in the negative, and they judge their game on that. And that's fine. That's a valid way to play. I'm not particularly concerned about that. I'm in it to have fun. If I get killed, that's all right. In time, my skills are going to get better, and I'll be able to fly a little bit stronger ships, and I'll be able to put better equipment on it, and we'll see what happens the next time we get out there. We're not going to give up yet. Anyway, that's a really basic taste of PvP. I apologize that it wasn't longer. Unfortunately, we were dead before we even started, and part of that's my own slow reaction time and letting him get the drop on me. But as you can see, that's the importance of the D-scan. That's the importance of being situationally aware. And it's the importance of making sure that you have all your skills where they need to be before you go out and looking for trouble. Having drones would have helped. Having my energy grade upgrades done, maybe I could have fit that tungsten sheet, and my armor might have lasted longer. Either way, we're going to continue learning skills, and in our next episode, I'm going to get into some missions. I'm going to show you how you play missions to get money and increase your standings so that you can fly the better ships and go back out there and do better in PvP. I'll also start showing you the basics of mining. I'll see you then.